Biscuit? You just take one anyway. I got diagnosed just prior to my 21st birthday. I didn't know how to spell celiacs, I didn't know how to say it, I had never ever heard of it. I am Ruth and I have had celiacs since I was 20. In our family we have 3 generations of celiacs. Our daughter's been diagnosed for 3 years and my mum will have been diagnosed for about 18 months. Now my twin sister doesn't have celiacs. If you look at our 21st photo, my sister has this most beautiful cake and I have this cake that is covered in lots of icing and all this ribbon. Oh, it was dreadful, it tasted awful, but my mum was really adamant that we were both having this cake and mine was to look as good as my sister's.
Celiac disease is an intestinal reaction caused by exposure to dietary gluten. One of the most tricky things with celiac disease is they have to avoid very small and trace amounts of gluten. Understandably that can affect a lot of things around like how you eat socially, where you're buying your food, and people with celiac disease do, for that reason, end up being very food savvy.
My daughter Anna is celiac. She is 14 now and she was 9 or 10 when she was diagnosed. I've got 2 other daughters who are older than Anna, and so far nobody else is celiac. So when Anna gets glutened now, she gets a sort of a hollow stomach feeling and then it's painful. For her it usually passes within 24 hours. She basically won't be able to sleep for that night and often needs to take the day off school the next day. She's lucky she doesn't get some of the very severe symptoms that some people get.
From mental health to chronic joint issues to risk of other health conditions in the future. So I think that's definitely something that really does change people's lifestyle.
Yeah, quite a wholesome diet. We make majority of our own. We have some chickens in the garden and we try to grow our own vegetables.
So when I go shopping, obviously some of it's straightforward. There's a lot of label reading that goes on and I've got quite good at it now, but to begin with it's very intimidating because you've got no idea the number of ingredients that go into some of these things. So with the things like the chili beans, you find a brand that is actually gluten-free and then I still check every time because the ingredients can change between purchases and they don't notify you. So, 1 minute you think they're gluten-free and then hello, you find they've changed the contents. This is actually still okay, so we can get it, so that's great. Just looking at the nuts and things, which technically are gluten-free, but because they're not pre-packaged, it's a risk with the handling and you don't know, whether they've come into contact with gluten before they've gone into the containers. A lot of them actually say may contain gluten, which is just indicating that risk that's there with the handling. Another thing that you find is that a lot of the gluten-free stuff is sweet. Not that there's anything wrong with a bit of sweet stuff now and then. If you want to buy something that's pre-done, there's very little in the way of sort of good savoury options. In terms of the actual kitchen, I've got a set of utensils that are for gluten. I have a sieve that we use for gluten, separate chopping boards. And I've got a green sticker system, which is like if a jar's got a green sticker on it, then it's gluten-free. We have separate spreads, so there's a separate butter for Anna, peanut butter and all that sort of stuff, that all of that has to be kept separate. It's when you have people to stay or when we have just had someone house sit, I had to kind of put away some stuff because We didn't want, there's a separate toaster, for example, so you've got to make sure that someone who doesn't then go and put a normal piece of toast in the gluten-free toaster, and yeah, so it kind of makes the house a bit complicated.
One of the things is you like to meet up with people and you like to meet up with friends, and usually these occasions evolve around food, and that can be kind of probably one of the hardest things.
Many social events will involve some kind of food. It's a way that we bring people together. If you can't have that food, then you feel like you're missing out.
It can be a kind of anxious time. You don't want to go in wearing this big badge and a glowy flashy lights to say I can't touch gluten and look like a right idiot. So those situations just really require us a bit of navigation. Pretty lucky in the fact that my husband, he will always be first there by the barbecue, and he really monitors, and he will cook our food first and pop it aside. We'll always take some salads and food with us that are obviously all safe and gluten-free. There is risks of people putting tongs from one bowl to the other. We'll just usually subtly just dish our dinner up and put it off to the side before it all goes out into the main sort of serving area, so that we just don't have to worry. There's no spontaneous eating with celiacs. You have to be prepared. You have to look further ahead than just, let's go out for dinner. It's like, no. Let's go out for dinner tomorrow once we've phoned the restaurant and find out that they can cater for us.
A lot of places say they can do gluten-free food, but then they go, oh no, it's gluten-free, but it's in the same griller. And it's like, well, that's not actually, that might be gluten-free, but it's not celiac safe. We went away and we stopped in Thames, which is not a tiny town. We just wanted to stop and grab some lunch. We literally did the whole of the main drag of Thames, and there was nothing that was safe for her to eat.
It's definitely kind of like overwhelming sometimes when you can't like eat anywhere, and it is upsetting because you feel like such a hassle.
I think one of the things for me too is when places do gluten-free, just to make sure they take the extra step, so you'll go to a place that's got gluten-free whatever, but they'll have it in a cabinet next to the gluten stuff, and it's like, darn. Because we've felt that a few times, haven't we? We've looked at stuff and gone, it might be gluten-free, but it doesn't feel celiac safe.
Or like when you go to a restaurant and say like you're celiac and they're like, how severe are you? Or whatever. It's kind of annoying because it doesn't exist.
The cross-contamination is as much or as little, if you like, as a crumb or a chopping board or a knife that's been used on gluten and then used on the gluten-free food. How careful do we have to be? Well, you have to be completely careful. Eating out is a real a challenge.
Food is for sharing, and we do use food to connect with our colleagues. If you're unable to eat that food and you're separating yourself from that environment, it can feel very isolating.
Right, you need to roll some biscuits now. Who's your friend called that's got celiacs?
She
And what is it like to have another friend that's got celiacs?
good.
I remember when I took her and her little friend of hers to an event that we were going to, and they were sitting in the back of the car and they were just chatting away amongst themselves. Our school used to have a school canteen, and her wee friend was like, oh no, it's really annoying. My sister can have something, but I never can. And Freya piped up, but you can have the fruit sticks, the wee dehydrated leather fruit sticks, that's all it was. But he's like so proud that he could now have something from the canteen, that was just a big thing. And for them it's about inclusion. They could go to the school canteen and purchase something that was safe for them to eat, and they felt like they're the other children at school.
It's all that sort of shared eating thing. It's a bonding thing, the eating, and it can be very unbonding if you're not if you can't participate.
There's always times when having celiacs is a pain. It's not a card you've chosen, it's a card that you've been dealt. So you do just have to make the most of it. It's really important to feel included. You do feel sometimes you're on the outside. So many things evolve around food, and it's really nice to just go to places where you can just feel like everybody else.